Hello, brush strokes. No, I'm not talking about production stuff because I don't know anything about that. Just don't even. Stan TTV, you asked in my Discord what time the Popcast starts. Hold on, I got you. It starts now. Well, Fern, you complain about other people's divs? I saw some people going to bat for other people, and it's like, I don't know. I don't think you should be writing checks that other people have to cash. That doesn't seem very fair to them, but okay. The podcast starts in 10 minutes, and actually I'm still writing it. Thank you for the follow, Azuna. A little chilly. I see you had a fun weekend visiting the great state of Ohio. I should have something that actually lets you use channel points. I thought about doing the text-to-speak thing or whatever, but I don't want you guys talking over me. If there was some way to where you could do that and I could save it, and then at the end of a segment I could let those things play if they were actually questions, that might be cool. Audio inverted? What? What are you guys talking about? What am I missing here? I'm surprised I haven't been seen a playoff prediction where it's based off of a person's thoughts on the team's names. I think a lot of people are going to pick the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to win Div 9, honestly. Because why wouldn't you? My headphones are on backwards because these are headphones that have the microphone thing on it, and it would look really weird, even though the microphone's out of shot. It would look weird to have this thing just kind of stick out. So until I get the Bluetooth fixed on my computer so I can use my actual Bluetooth headphones, I'm stuck using these corded ones. And the camera angle should be a little bit more like that anyways. So, I'm just going to use them like this, or wear them like this. Popcast 30 minutes later. Yes. That can be done. Says to complain about the production scene and the lack of developers. Brush, that's something I'm gonna have to have you come on and talk about, buddy. You know I'm not involved in the production. When is the last time I've left a message in one of the production channels in IPL? Other than something kind of just making fun of something or just poking. When have I actually left like any kind of actual thoughts on anything production related IPL? Most of the comments I leave are just me making fun of everybody. I could find a way to squeeze a joke in here. Seriously, if you want to come on at some point, maybe over Christmas break or something when you got time and you want to rant about production stuff, I'm all for that. Not today, though. We're booked. Solid. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify. While you are discovering who your Twitter family members are and posting it on Twitter, because that's not awkward for anybody, clowning on me for losing 79,000 channel points on a single SOS match bet, making a video explaining exactly how to pronounce your name and that it is in fact Gigas and not Gooey Gus. Whatever it is that you're doing right now. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Obviously, hello. You who never watches any episode of the podcast except for this one. Welcome in. I understand that looking at the statistics of Popcast episodes that I do, the more popular ones are Low Ink previews and Low Ink recaps. But the single most popular one is the when I talked about LUTI divs, as we clean up the overlay here, talked about LUTI divs when they came out last season. So I understand there's a lot of people who are tuning in who traditionally don't really tune in. That's fine. Welcome in. And I'm happy to have you here, as long as you don't be an idiot in chat like the normal idiots are. But you might be interested in what other people in the seating council might have to say about seating and LUTI divs and all that good stuff. I listened to two last night. Parias_Sky99 gave his thoughts on several things. I believe Div 4, maybe Div 5 on down. I didn't get to watch that one all the way through. I did listen to all of Roundy Bouts. Roundy on the seating council did like Div 5-ish on up to X. Roundy Bout, I believe, is his Twitch handle. I believe the VOD of that should still be up. So if you want to hear other people's opinions in more of like a breakdown, like div by div, group by group in some instances of thoughts, other than my own, feel free to check those out. I listened to both of them, and those two were very good members on the seating council who actually did not just like, oh, I'm just here to do like the lower divs, or I'm just here to do the higher divs. Like they actually paid attention to the entire scope of 250 teams as a whole. So they have good takes and good opinions on things. So make sure to give them a listen if you're interested in stuff like that. It was a great weekend. Plus server votings, aren't those supposed to come out soon? Did they not come out already? They traditionally come out during the Popcast. So I guess that didn't happen over the weekend, but we still had two very big tournaments happen this past weekend. Next week is the Plus server. That works out. We still had two very big tournament events this past weekend, basically, arguably, two majors at the same time. Plus LUTI divs coming out literally right during I believe it came out during the FTWin Starburst set, if not the one right before that one, FTWin and Good Morning, which was a fantastic set in its own right. But great weekend. Also was my wife's birthday on Saturday. So the Christmas or the birthday gift that she got was Div 6. For their new team name, Halcoin or something like that. I haven't quite gotten the pronunciation of that one down, but basically the same team, just rebranded the name third time. This is going to be a very busy Popcast week. we are doing, so last week I said I had the next 12 episodes of the Popcast already planned out, at least topic wise, as I knew what I was going to talk about specifically for the next 12 episodes of the Popcast. 3 of those episodes are going to be this week. Today, obviously, well, we'll talk about today's stuff, but I don't know if I'm either going to do it tomorrow or Wednesday. I have to look at my actual IRL schedule, but we are going to do my personal LUTI div predictions. I'm not going to do like a week-by-week recap like I did last season. We're just going to do a prediction. We'll do like a mid-season look at things, and then we'll do like playoff scenarios. We'll look at each one. And what this time, we're not just doing Div 5 on down. We're going to do every single div this time around and see what happens here. Why should I just piss off low level by telling them what's going to happen when it doesn't happen, when I can piss off everybody and be correct about every single thing? I can lose a whole lot more than just channel points by incorrectly guessing these things. So let's cast the wider net here and see who all we can kind of catch in that sucker. So LUTI predictions coming out either tomorrow or Wednesday. The time might be a little funky. I don't expect the live audience for that to be pretty big, but obvious shout out to the people who watch on YouTube exclusively. You guys are the real ones, unless you're not. Also, Low Ink is this upcoming week about 6 days from now, and I think a lot of teams were waiting for LUTI divs to come out before they sign up, and a lot of people started to sign up after Saturday once those divs came out, and some people were like, "Oh wow, I'm eligible for Low Ink now," and other teams were like, "Oh crap, this is gonna be the last one I can do." So we'll be previewing Low Ink on Friday. And it should be possibly one of the more... It's weird to say considering all the Low Inks we've had this year that have been absolutely insane. This one could potentially, because of all the emotion and hype building up to it, could be even more insane just because there's so much more on the line this time around. So we're going to be previewing that Friday as well. So a lot of stuff to be talking about on the Popcast this week. And I also got to reach out to... Who do we play? We play Meta something this week, so I got to reach out to that captain. I got to schedule that. Can I do 3 Popcast episodes and play in LUTI in the same week? Can we do all of that? Let's find out. Today we're going to be discussing all the Starburst versus FTWin matches from the last week. They played 3 times. Arguably didn't, I guess, depending on how you look at the formats of the things. But there's a lot to kind of talk about with all the tournaments that happened last weekend. And we're going to cover a lot of different things with that on a broader scope. And also, obviously, recapping all the other tournaments that happened this past week, as well, as a lot of teams were trying to squeeze in those last little results so that they could get the attention of the seeding council to get bumped up a little bit. All that and more today on the Popcast. But first, during this segment, I typically don't pay attention to chat. People know that. If there is a question you have, LUTI related, feel free to highlight a message in chat. And at the end of this segment, I'll go back through and I'll check over the highlight ones. If it's a question that is related to why is my team in this certain div, the answer is going to be results. So if you want to ask anyways, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure 99% of the answers is your results are what dictated what div you got. Or why you got that specific div. If you have, if it's a question that I probably feel like I don't know if I can answer this because there's some things like you're not supposed to share from the seeding council, specifically like other people's thoughts, where like the actual seeding, like who put my team where kind of thing. I don't think I can answer that, and I don't really want to answer that. But if you have a question, highlight it in chat, and I'll go back and look at it. And if nobody's in questions, that's great. That means I don't have to do anything. The day LUTI div drops, is like Christmas for the competitive scene. Did Santa bring me what I wanted this year? I saw a lot of people kind of tweeting out things like, "Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so nervous." Somebody talking about how they were crying because they were so nervous about their LUTI divs coming out, and it's like, bruh, it's not that deep, or at least maybe we've made it out to be that deep. I don't know, but I've seen a lot of people kind of building up this week, and when LUTI divs come out, it's either the joy that you were a good boy or girl this year and you got the div you wanted, or the disappointment that you didn't get enough results and Santa brought you a giant lump of coal and put you in Div 8. Well, let's start off by kind of explaining how seeding actually works. For at least me personally. So all the members of the seeding council have access to a spreadsheet. And what you do is you put in your teams from Div X first and work your way down all the way to Div 9, or at least what Div 10 was initially going to be. You go in through that order. Me personally, I printed out a Excel sheet of all the teams. I don't have that sheet with me. I think it's in my car, and I don't want to show you guys anyways because I actually put down where I personally put every single team on there. But I basically printed off a sheet. And every team, I looked at it first. Everybody I actually knew, I seeded first. Took out my highlighter when I put them in, highlighted them. Then at the very end of it, when I got all the teams I got in there, which was about, of the 250 teams, I knew like immediately who about 200 of them were. The problem is these pickups, these random team names, these other things, these teams that like have no inherent, like, okay, who the heck are these guys, made things extremely confusing for a lot of people on the seeding council. If you so when you put everybody in and you got those 50 teams left, the best thing for us is to go back and look at the information that you put down in your registration form, which was, here's your team information. A lot of you helped yourselves out by putting down actual information about your team. And a lot of you screwed yourselves over by putting down nothing. And you just had to hope and pray that somebody in the seeding council actually recognized who you were. Sharks. Let me ask you guys that. You just see that name, Sharks. And they put down zero information about themselves. Where do you put that team? You put them in Div 9 with the other teams that have absolutely no information and nothing else about them. That team owes me because I recognized one of the players on that team had like their IGN was like just a bunch of letters and numbers in a bunch of weird order. And I recognize, hey, I've seen that name a lot when I'm verifying teams for LUTI, so I was able to go through, or for Low Ink, so I was able to go through our Low Ink database and find that specific player and be like, oh crap, this player was on that ultimate Hopstaker team that got alpha bracket a couple of times. So I was like, oh, okay. I found something to work with. You gave us literally nothing to work with, and because of that, I was able to find something. So some of you teams, Roundy caught somebody else too. There was someone else we put in Div 9 where Roundy was like, hey, no, I know who this player is. I know who this one player is on this team. So that gives us something to work with. Fruit Gummy, yes, that's right. So a lot of you really did not help yourself out at all. When it comes to filling out information for your team in the registration form, you need to do that. If you don't have actual team results, who are you? This player did this in this tournament. This player got this many voting points in that tournament. Anything helps. Literally anything helps. There's some team that just put down, we scrim against these other teams. And it's like, okay, that's it's not tourney results, but you at least prove that you play the game to some extent. That helps somewhat. But some of you who changed your name last minute or put a pickup together last minute and failed to submit any information about who you were, and you got put in Div 9, I do not feel sorry for you at all. You got what you deserve. If you got underseeded in any way, I don't feel sorry for you. You got to help yourselves out. Give us some information to work with. Or just be lucky somebody actually went through and played detective to figure out who you were. So that's how it works. Here's where I think a lot of you get kind of mixed up here. I saw a ton of tweets last week of people saying, leave what div you think you're going to get below, or tell me what team you are and I'll predict what div you're going to get. Those things are cool. No issues with it. Like, having conversations and predicting things is fun. I'm obviously in the business of doing that once a month with Low Ink. You're all going about it the wrong way, though, and that's why all the predictions seemingly were incorrect. Let me explain. So let's use the bus stop analogy, the bus station analogy that I used last season. So all teams, 250 teams, they get in line, and they all get into a certain bus based on the price that they paid to get into that certain bus, right? So what you guys are doing is you're just going up to people in line, randomly in line, and you're asking, hey, can I see your resume? And they give you the resume, and what you're looking at, and then you look at their resume and you immediately go, the best bus that you can buy is the Div 3 bus. So I'm going to write you a ticket for Div 3. There you go. And you just go down the line and you do it right then and there, right? What you're going to do is you're going to give out 24 teams a ticket to the Div 3 bus, and then you're going to go talk to another team, and they're going to be like, oh, yes, you're a Div 3 team as well. Let me just, oh, crap. I already gave out all my tickets to the Div 3 bus. Well, you're clearly a Div 3 team, but I already told all those other guys they were Div 3 as well. So oh, crap, what do I do here? And that's the thing. You have to look at this from a picture of the grand scope of things, not just narrowly minded on one individual team. You have to look at all the resumes of 250 teams. Then you go through and you write your tickets for who gets what div. A few things else you need to point out here. One, you can only rank teams against the other teams that sign up. No FTWin, no Sonder, no Radiance, no Jackpot, no Kings. So that's 5 teams I just named right off the bat, that if they signed up, automatically everybody, regardless of where they end up, goes down 5 spots. There's nothing they can do to affect that. There's nothing they can there's nothing they can do to help that situation, to no fault of their own. If those 5 teams sign up, everybody gets pushed down 5 slots. So all those teams you said should be Div 3, well, because FTWin is here, they're now Div 4. Nothing they can do about that. Number 2, each div only has 24 teams in it. Like I just said, even if there are not 24 teams that fit into a certain bus, you still have to bump up teams into that slot, and that's kind of what happened here. What you guys are trying to do on Twitter is to fit teams into the mold of what a certain div is, right? Like in your mind, a Div 3 team fits this certain kind of criteria. Like I played against that team and I know like what a Div 3 team looks like, and you fit that Div 3 team. However, if you need 24 teams in each div and there's not enough teams that fit that Div 2 criteria, well, you're not just going to leave Div 2 empty. You're going to have teams bump up and fill into those slots, right? Last season, I said when it came to the bus station, the bus came to arrive. Like Div 3 and Div 2, there were maybe like 30 people that had a ticket for Div 2. And then we loaded up the Div 2 bus and there was like 6 teams left over. And you're like, oh, excuse me, I bought a ticket for this Div 2 bus, good sir. And they're like, yeah, well, the bus got filled. So I'm sorry, kind of like some airplane companies, we overbooked our airplane. So you're just going to have to wait till the next bus, which just so happens to be Div 3. And you're not getting a refund, unfortunately. That sucked for a lot of teams last season. This season, I'm arguing the exact opposite happened here. I'm arguing for divs 1, 2, 3, and as a lot of people were pointing out on Twitter, maybe you could throw div 4 into this category. Div 1, the bus showed up, and it got filled up with I don't know, random number, 18 teams or so. And the bus conductor is like, oh, crap, we got 6 other seats on this bus. Hey, who are the next 6 Div 2 teams in line? Yeah, you guys come on up. You guys are now on this bus right now. And then everyone in the back of the line is like, you see what's going on there? Like, everybody's getting bumped up because there's more spots on these other buses. So that's what happened. Div 1, Div 2, Div 3, maybe Div 4 was filled up with a lot of teams, in my opinion, that didn't fit the mold of what you would traditionally think a Div 1, 2, 3, or 4 team would be. But because somebody had to be moved up and filled into those spots, that's what happened. That's why I tweeted out that I felt like those divs were a little more free. That doesn't mean that there are teams in there that didn't flat out earn their spots. That's not the case at all. But as I'm looking at some of the predictions, a lot of you guys were off. A lot of you guys underseeded a lot of teams by 1 div, and you're probably wondering, how did they get bumped up like that? That's why. The fact of the matter is, mid-level just didn't really show up for this one. I didn't go through and do like a analysis of like how many people in the plus server played versus how many didn't. The only way to really do that is just like search individual player by name, and that would take too much time, and I don't really care that much. But it is kind of a sign of the times when you think about it. Hi, honey. For the longest time, how you defined yourself was by the div number that you got. For people in the plus server, that's not the case anymore. Does anyone in the plus server really care what div you got? Or let me say this. Will you care about the div that you got a month from now? Or will you define yourself by the plus server that you are currently in, the amount of votes that you get in the plus server? We've individualized this team sport so much that people don't really care what your team div is anymore. If you can say, well, I'm in +3, or, oh, I almost got into +2, or I got I'm like halfway to getting into +1. That's what defines you. That's what your Twitter bios are going to be about. And with all these pickup teams, why would you want to be associated with a div for a team that A, you're only playing with for a month and a half anyways, and B, you don't really, B, you might not even be on that team going forward. So it's kind of a sign of the times, I feel like. Mid-level didn't show up in droves like we've seen before because there's not really much reason for them to play, unless they're just looking for like something to do mid-level wise, and this is like the closest thing to it. The problem though, low-level teams showed up in massive numbers. This LUTI tournament, in my opinion, is filled to the brim with teams that are in low level. But Popgun, doesn't that make sense? Low level is the biggest portion of the scene. Of course they would show up. Yes, but we have like, what, 50, 75 less teams than we did last season? I'm looking over these low ink / low level teams, and I'm saying all these teams played last season. Like, all these teams came back. The teams that didn't come back were the teams at the upper echelon of the divs that just kind of freed up a lot of slots for everybody. I mean, somebody's in chat. Oh, well, my team's not playing in it. Yes, Wiggly Phantoms, I know. You guys are currently in the middle of a rebranding kind of thing. But low level did show up. And that's what kind of congested a lot of these other divs. And now people were calling me out because I think people were claiming that I said Div 4 is low level. I did not say that. You cannot find a clip of me saying the phrase Div 4 is low level unless you're the Wiggly Phantoms and you just clipped that literal sentence out of context and made it seem like I just said that. No. What I said was, because there was a lack of teams at the top, some teams in low level had to get filled up into Div 4. And maybe I didn't make that inherently clear when I was kind of saying that. And of course, this is all my opinion. What is low level, mid level, and high level anyways? There's no set standard for that. And what I think what we're learning is you can't use LUTI divs for that, because LUTI divs are just for teams that sign up in it. The Wiggly Phantoms didn't sign up for LUTI. So what does that mean? Well, they're not Div 4. Does that mean they're not low level because they didn't technically get any kind of Div anything? It's all up for interpretation. But traditional low ink teams, my point being, did sign up for this tournament, and it did congest things. In the last season, Divs 4 through 8 were 48 teams. This time around, it was all 24 teams in each one of those divs. And that kind of makes things a little bit more narrow, right? Because a lot of people were looking at their div like, man, I was in Div 5, but now I'm in Div 6. But what you don't realize is last season, Div 4 was Div 4 plus Div 5. If you just included 24 teams each, right? They just got combined into one. Last season, Div 5 would be this season's Div 6 and Div 7. Now, you start doing the math and you're like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't really add up, because then you go Div 6 was last season's Div 8 and Div nothing else, because there was no other Div after that. Or I might have said that backwards, but you get what I'm saying. Eventually, you'll run out of divs to where they don't really add into each other, because technically, in theory, there's less teams here than there was last season. But with 24 teams in each div, it does make things a little bit more narrow. And you do have more people to kind of point out, hey, why am I here when I was not in this div last season? I was a div higher last season. Or why am I in this div again, so to speak, as a lot of people were kind of pointing out. Were there any complaints? Yeah, of course there's complaints. There's always going to be people complaining about their LUTI div. It's impossible for somebody for like a perfect LUTI div to be brought out to where nobody would complain about it. In fact, you could even present the perfect. Here is the perfect 1 through 250 team LUTI div seeding, and somebody's still going to complain about it anyways. You had that one team, bless their heart, who went to the complaint channel and submitted an appeal for a div. And I explained to them, no, you can't appeal your div. You can only complain about it. You can't just flat out like submitted an appeal. Could you imagine if that was the thing? If you could appeal, like submit a form appealing the div that you got? Every single team would do that. Oh my goodness. That would be so incredibly, insanely convoluted. But as far as people complaining, I didn't see a lot of it, at least not as much as I did see last season. Instead, it's impossible to avoid. It personally, this is just me speaking, I don't really care. And I don't mean that in like an insensitive kind of way, like, oh, who cares? You get with the div you got. But if your argument is that you are off by one div, okay, you might be right. If there's a team in Div 4 claiming they should be in Div 3, I might say, I agree with you. You fit the mold of a Div 3 team. The problem is, so do the other 24 teams that got put in that div. It makes no sense to sit here and bang the table and say you should be up one div when you are also at the same time not going to have the guts to say whose spot on the bus you should be taking. Of course, nobody's going to do that, because if you got the guts to write that check, you better have the gameplay to back it up with if you go against that team in a tournament, because you're just kind of poking a bear that you probably don't want to be poking. But to sit here and say that it's an absolute crime that you were off by one div, was it really? Is it really? Like, whose spot are you supposed to be taking? Now, if somebody were to complain that, oh, I was off by 2 spots, like you guys completely missed something that we did, that I would be interested in. And I didn't see anybody complain about being way off that wasn't that wasn't justified in a sense. Like if some team complained like, hey, I'm off by like 2 divs, like you got, like we beat Sonder in this tournament, you guys just completely didn't miss it, or you guys completely missed it. If I saw something like that, the first thing I would do would say, okay, let me look at the team info sheet. Did you put in your information, my team beat Sonder at any point, or did you just leave it blank and just hope that throughout the course of the week, while we're doing detective work on every single team that signed up for this tournament, that we're going to dig that deep into you and figure out that exact information? I don't know. I haven't seen a single complaint that has made me think we screwed up something. There might have been somebody in Div 9 who came out and been like, hey, you kind of missed this. But again, it's like, well, if you're in Div 9, it's because we don't know who you were and you didn't tell us anything about you, and we're not going to go hunting for that information unless it's inherently clear. So I don't know. I feel like it's fine. I feel like the seeding is fine. Did I see some teams complain? Yeah, and it's fine. Now, here's another thing I want to point out. I don't exactly agree with the mindset of, well, if you got the div you don't like, didn't this prove them wrong? Well, no, you're not proving anybody wrong. If you like flat out destroy, yeah, if you like go undefeated, if you pull an unlucky and just like go in Div D and just go like 30-0 per game, yeah, okay, yeah, you proved us wrong. But if you win of course you're gonna win the div. We are expecting you to win. If you were a bubble team and you were on the downside of it, like we pumped you down to Div 5 when you could have clearly been in Div 4 if you just had a little bit better results. You're not proving us wrong by winning Div 5. That's what we expect you to do. We would be surprised if you didn't win the div that you were seeded to win. Of course, that you're not proving anybody wrong. And of course, keep in mind with this, proving us wrong, that's going to take a month, maybe 2 months from now. You are all going to be completely different players 2 months from now. What this seeding is a snapshot of where we think your team is on November 13th, 2021. Everything you do after that doesn't count toward your seeding in the past. We can't go back and reseed a team on November 13th for what they do on November 14th. That's not how time travel works. At least I'm pretty sure time travel doesn't work that way. I've seen a lot of time traveling movies. They all have different interpretations of that. But still, the mindset of prove this LUTI seeding council wrong. No, why are you trying to prove anything to us? If you think you're a different div than what you are, why do you care what I think? Yes, you get put into a div that you might feel like is easy for you. But if you didn't want that div, guys, go get some results in tournaments other than that. If you are a low-ink team, you guys know we have to pay attention to you anyways to find out if you're eligible for low-ink or not, right? So like we keep an eye on what you do. So if you didn't have the results to get banned from low-ink, what do you expect us to do? That's my question. For the tournament itself, I like it. I feel like a lot of these divs are going to be fun. I'm really excited about Div 9 because it's like 95% a mystery. I'm excited about Div 8 because I feel like 100% of the teams, unless we flat out miss somebody, 100% of the teams are legit. Like legit at that level. So I don't think there's going to be an Ink Reaper situation or something like that. Now I say that and it probably will happen. Odds are 48 teams that it's going to happen. But I feel like Div 8, everybody in Div 8 is somewhat verifiable to be legit in that div. I'm excited about the div that I'm in. I hope you're excited about the div that you're in as well. If not, well, prove the seeding council wrong, I guess. I don't know. I'm excited about Div 8 to an extent, just watching it. Some of the teams other than Starburst, who's just going to flat out rip that div apart yet again. But Otherwise, as the last reminder, it's seeding for a LUTI tournament only. If you guys are interested in rankings, I would direct you to Roundy and the monthly ranking council, who comes out with a list every single month of where your team is ranked monthly wise. That's what a ranking of the whole community looks like. LUTI Divs, it's a tournament only for players that signed up in it. Now, what does this mean for like skill caps and all this stuff? I think I saw someone ask that. If anything low ink related, obviously it's already been announced. LSL kind of announced that they're going down to Div 7 and below. Parias' reasoning for that on his stream yesterday was if it didn't do that, it would just basically be a discount low ink. And then keep in mind, it's not really changing anything. 48, so it was Div 6 last season, whereas low ink is Div 5. There was a bigger gap then because there was 48 teams in Div 5. Now there's only 24 teams in Div 5. So to keep that 48 team gap, LSL goes down to Div 7. It's not, in theory, it seems like it's a change, but it's really not that big of a change. It's more just keeping things the same, even though it looks kind of different. So people talking about low level things like adjusting, like, yeah, they adjust just to fit what the definition is, but like the skill gap or like the actual skill level of each one of these things stayed roughly the same. We'll talk more about low ink on Friday, and we'll scroll back up here and we'll look at your and check. Popgun, this is such a bad first impression for the new people in the text chat. Well, that's fine. Does the current standing of every LUTI group equal their seed for their group? No. Well, actually, yes and no. LUTI groups are... Now, I am not directly involved in the LUTI group, like actually putting together the groups in each div at all. I'm not involved in that, but it's not just like a direct, like, oh, number one goes here and then it snakes around. It's more so tried to set up to where, yes, you're seeding, but more so what region are you in? Or did you put down on your sheet that you wanted to play specifically your region, or if you wanted to mix it up? If you put down that you wanted to mix it up, and you didn't care what region you played against, you probably got put in a group with a bunch of European teams. Congratulations. But it's more so about what region you're in plus the seeding. So it's not like a direct, it's not a direct representation of what the final seeding was for the seeding council there, if that answers that question. When does a good tournament outweigh a bad one? BLT had a blatantly terrible low ink, but FTWin results was enough to get Div 4. Why? Again, if it's individual teams, I can't really... It's not that I can't. It's just that I don't have that information right off the top of my head. And I don't want to sit here and talk about, oh, this team did this and that team did that. For BLT, FTWin results, what have you done for me lately? I'll say this, though. The wins you got in FTWin are things we would consider as too good for low ink anyways. That's not to say you would have been banned outright. This isn't the place to make that statement. But if you're going to overlook the wins you got in FTWin, if the seeding council overlooked what the wins you got in FTWin, our verification team might not have specifically. If the DIDs aren't as accurate to a skill mold we expect, why haven't we changed low-level tournament skill caps? I feel like I talked about that specifically. If you look at what actually Div 4 is, what you got teams that are traditionally in low ink. You got ITAP, Wipeout Punks, BLT, Leg, get Div 4 maybe, and there might be some other team I'm missing. Everybody else there, there are a lot of teams that have already been banned from low ink. There's a couple of high ink players mixed in with some pickups around there. So like a good chunk of Div 4, regardless of what div you put them in, we're not letting them back into low ink anyway. So Div 4, in that, again, the cutoff has to be somewhere, and that's why we try to be flexible. That's why we're letting in the traditional low ink teams into Div that made it into Div 4 back into low ink one more time. But again, if you're constantly making alpha brackets, you need to start winning some low inks because you're flirting with fire. You don't get an infinite amount of times to win low ink. That's why I don't feel bad about kicking a team out. It's like you've had your shots to win low ink. And not everybody, if we're going to go through, everybody gets to stay in low ink until you actually win it. It's going to be what, 2050, like the year 2050, before we squeeze through every single team that's playing in low ink right now. Like, no, if you go off in other tournaments, which you should be doing, and you pop off in other tournaments, you get to graduate from low ink. But the skill cap, no, it hasn't changed. Of course, we're trying to be flexible and understanding for some other teams, but if anyone's saying they are still should be let allowed into low ink, that you're making the wrong kind of argument. Is Div 4 low level? That depends on who you talk to. Was Div X 2 even considered, or Div 2 or 3 into smaller, or splitting 2 and 3 into smaller divs? I think so 2 seasons ago there was that X plus div, and I think the general consensus is that wasn't received very well at all among the viewers or the participants. So I think that was the mindset behind that. Splitting 2 or 3 into smaller divs. Well, the problem with that is, again, it's seeding for a tournament. If you make smaller divs, you need to really you need to make a set number of teams. It's not like, 22 teams are here, are legit Div 2. Let's make Div 2 22 teams. Because when you go to make your tournament, it's going to be like, oh crap, now like everyone's got to buy, and it's all awkward and things like that. So you need that 24 teams to where the tournament actually functions, which is again why divs are not about your ranking. It's just for a tournament seed. Our groups themselves seeded. I feel like I just answered that one a little bit while ago. And, oh gosh, we got one last one. This is going to be the last one, then we're going to move on. SIP divs are based only on teams that sign up, but in general, teams are banned from tourneys by their div for being too good. But like you said, if certain teams sign up, everyone gets moved down. So how do you balance whether a team is too good for a tourney, whether LUTI is indicative of the entire community? Because even if you are, look, just because you are Div 5 doesn't automatically mean you're back into low ink, okay? Kraken Mayor is Div 5 right now with Triggerfish Supremacy. Kraken Mayor is a former Div 1 player playing on a pickup with some other friends. Are we going to let Kraken Mayor back in the low ink? I'm not breaking any news here when I say no, that is not the case. So everything's a case-by-case basis with low ink. It always has been. The line in the sand has to be somewhere, which is Div 5, right? So the line in the sand has to be somewhere, but we still look at everything case-by-case basis. Everybody gets verified. It's not just an automatic assumption, oh, I'm Div 5, let's go back in. No, we still look at everything. It's just you have to have a line definition somewhere. And that's 43 minutes. No, Vapor. Oh, you hit the \J, of course. Again, we'll preview actual LUTI divs coming up. Either tomorrow or Wednesday. Yes, make sure I need to DM you after this or something. Because I want to get that set up sooner rather than later. I like that highlighted question thing. That was fun. Maybe I should do that again. Oh. Give me that weekly recap music.
That they need and the paint that they need. Oh my, it is 1v2 for that zone. The K52 finally going down, and that is GG's. Tuki taking the match as well as grand finals in SOS 48.
The very much sounds very good to the ears of all the Tuki fans in chat today, as that was Skepidillion and Fern on the call for SOS number 48, which did in fact see Tuki not winning a Hammerhead bracket, but actually winning all of SOS for a change. How about that? They'll have to make room in their trophy case. They got to throw out one of their Hammerhead trophies to make room for that one. Knocking off Tempest 4-2. Riz's Experiment taking third place in that tournament. Good to see 2 actual teams. Yes, Tempest is an actual team playing in that one. Tuki, of course, being, well, if you don't know who Tuki is, you've left out on the one of the biggest inside jokes in the scene right now. Hammerhead bracket won by Summit. Bless their heart, got screwed over by playing Operation Paradox, and just took out their frustration on all of Hammerhead bracket, going 10-0 per games in that one. Yikes! Have fun dealing with that team. Mako bracket won by Red Sun, and Lantern bracket was won by the Pungus Bros Circus. The course, the driving range tournament, whatever they're calling themselves. I don't think I've ever talked about this tournament, but it is the modern day casual Friday slash what was that other? There was another tournament. It used to be on Fridays at 7 o'clock. Try meme, something like that. There's always some sort of tournament that happens on Friday around 7 o'clock. That is a double elimination tournament, and then they run for a few times and then goes away forever. The driving range, the course, the current incarnation of that tournament, won by Jackpot. Second place going to Skywaka. Players for that team, I'm assuming to pick up Red Rum, Bless, Waka, and Isaac. Some of it, who I'm pretty sure is Some It, took third place in that tournament. Launch day took place this past weekend as well. Obviously, we're going to be talking about FTWin and Starburst's participation in that one. But the team that won it, take a guess. If I told you there is a tournament with a large prize pool, in this case $1,000, the team who ended up winning this tournament and signed up for it, let's all say it together, it's the Kings. This team that's just showing up for all these tournaments and dominating everybody. It wasn't an easy win this time around, but still a win nonetheless for the Kings. They earn it over FTWin, who finished in second place. Starburst going to third. Beta bracket going to Azult. I initially forgot that there was a beta bracket here, but then I saw Azult tweeting about it. Rightfully so. They win beta over Port Raccoon. Unlucky, the team that dominated Fluty Div D, finished in third place in that bracket. The Kansas City Chiefs bounced back from their losing streak to rip the Raiders a new one, 41-14. The Rams are about to do the same thing against the 49ers tonight with the help of OBJ. And that was the weekly recap. Sponsored by all the people who paid me for their LUTI divs over the course of last week. I'm not ashamed to admit it. The going rate for the certain div you wanted was 100 channel points, because I'm rapidly running out of those things. So all the teams who paid for their LUTI div, thank you for sponsoring the Popcast. Well, I didn't call you out by name. All right. So this past weekend, we had 2 majors, maybe, arguably. The launch day tournament took place on Saturday and Sunday, as well as the Fresh Four, the Nintendo tournament that Nintendo seemingly pulled out of their butts at the last minute to throw 4 teams together who won a single mode only tournament and let them go up against each other. What we all wanted to see, basically since January of this year, was a FTWin versus Starburst matchup. And we got them to play against each other 3 times in a span of 2 days in one weekend. That's awesome, right? Except there's always something. there's always some sort of excuse or limitation that just kind of bogs it down to be something that is not as exciting as we kind of hope it will be. When they played in Riptide, it was an FTWin. It was not FTW. Because they had 2 subs, or at least maybe just 1. I guess depending. I don't know what their official roster is nowadays, and I kind of question if they know as well. But still, Starburst won that one, and everybody was like, well, they didn't beat FTWin. They just beat not FTWin. All right, fair enough. They played in Super Jump. And they were going to go up against each other with no excuses this time around. It was going to be FTWin's, the actual roster, minus Birchty, and it was going to be Starburst. They were set for a date in Winners Finals. No gimmicks, no limitations, no LAN, unfortunately, but as close to an actual battle between 2 Titans as we were going to get. Then Jackpot spoiled everything by upsetting FTWin and knocking them into losers bracket and semifinals, and then FTWin went up against Kings, and you know how that goes. So kind of spoiled. That was the one opportunity. That was the one match of all these opportunities. Super Jump was it, and they came so close, and then Jackpot said, nah, we're coming back, and we're going to submit our bid as being one of the best teams in this tournament as well, just so you know. Next up, a month later, the Nintendo tournament comes around on Saturday. And of course, it was going to be not FTWin playing against Starburst. Although Good Morning did put in a good case to knock off not FTWin, almost beating them outright in the taking them to a game 5 before not FTWin was able to get the win there. Now, not FTWin goes up 3-0 in the best of 7. And then Starburst comes back with an amazing reverse sweep. In fact, FTWin should have won that game 4. Like, they had a monstrous lead at Clan Blitz Humpback late into that game 4, and it seemed like they were just going to get the sweep. And then Starburst just puts together one big push, and then it's just kind of steamrolled from there. Game 5, unfortunately, the counter pick rules where you had to go through every mode once before you went to the final, before you could start repeating modes. And since they used all 4 actual modes, game 5, FTWin had to counter pick Turf War, which sucked that was involved in a match between those 2 teams. However, not just because it was that, but also because, as we found out, Starburst is really freaking good at Turf War. And when those 2 teams played in like the Turf War seeding thing, pools or whatever to determine the seed for the Fresh 4, they absolutely dominated FTWin Turf War at Muscle Forge Fitness. So when they went to Mako Mart, it was pretty much the same thing. Starburst, the team that had to get a win, it seemed like Starburst got the free counter pick right there. Like, Turf War clearly worked out into their favor. And then with a 2-game momentum, they win game 6. And then in game 7, you have the RNG of all RNG moments with the 96 gal with Ant. It was overtime. Rainmaker at the Reef. FTWin has 3 players alive. Starburst only has 1, a 96 gal. And the 96 gal gets a triple. The RNG, some luck involved. Yeah, obviously more skill than that, because there's ways to kind of manipulate the RNG slightly with the 96 gal. But still, the clutchness of that is one of the most clutch moments of all time. A 1v3 with the lead, where if you die, you automatically lose the whole tournament, and you get a triple with it, with no help from your teammates because they're all dead. Absolutely incredible. Can't take that away. But it's not FTWin. It's still not FTWin. Their roster for that one being 2D, Keo, Biscuit, and Bagel. Classic Biscuit-Bagel combination. Lo and behold, we all knew they were going to play the next day anyways, because they were invited to skip the Saturday portion of launch day because they've already played, because they had to play in the Nintendo one. So they got automatically put into alpha bracket for launch day, and they did meet up against each other in semifinals. This time around, though, It is the actual FTWin. They dropped the not from their name. Why? Because they switched out 2D for Shaq, which I'm pretty sure 2D is actually on the FTWin roster or was before or something like that. I don't know. What's the difference between the only difference roster-wise Saturday and Sunday was 2D coming out and Shaq going in, and that was enough for them to drop the not from their name and be actual FTWin. So be it. But that version of FTWin against Starburst completely flipped the script. 3-0 in semifinals of winner's side, 3-0 in losers finals on the loser's side. 6-0 against Starburst with the actual after dropping the knot. But, and a big but here, it was a gimmick tournament. You can't use certain abilities, you can't use certain weapons, you can only use certain maps. There's no clan blitz, and it's this. It's a limited set. And I tweeted this out yesterday. What would you rather do? Would you rather beat not FTWin in the Nintendo tournament, having to do Turf War to do that? Or would you rather beat Starburst 6-0 in a gimmick tournament? And it's so frustrating that we are getting these two teams playing against each other. These two teams are clearly wanting to play against each other to try to figure out who we can say is legit better than the other. But it's never been a fair, legit, no gloves off, no limitations, anything like that. There's always something. And that's always kind of frustrating, which kind of leads me to say this. We've been having a lot of gimmick tournaments lately, a lot of gimmick tournaments with rather large prize pools, and it's interesting to kind of see. It's interesting to play in. But I guess my question is, are we really that tired of the meta that we need to have majors with significant limitations on them? Now, Beta will tell you that this launch day tournament was kind of an experiment to see what people would, how people would react to a gimmick tournament with a large prize pool. Of course, that was before Super Jump before Shopping Spree got announced and did a format I think arguably might be better, even though it was just a one-day tournament with Swiss. The actual concept of buying a weapon as opposed to using like launch day weapons seemed like a more interesting gimmick if you were to compare the two. And another reason why it's kind of frustrating to see these two teams play in launch day. What did we find out from launch day? It's interesting. There was a testing grounds that one of the gimmicks of that was you couldn't use an armor weapon. So what did you see? You saw a team make it semifinals using double C-Jet. Stingray spam the entire time. Hey, if you can't use armor to stop Stingray, we're just going to fire Stingrays at you twice, nonstop, every single mode. And it worked. What did you see in this last tournament? Well, it was an interesting concept until somebody realized I can just spam missiles. We got so many missiles when all of those sets that were on stream on Sunday that people were getting so frustrated on Twitter, and you could tell the players were just frustrated in the match, but the only thing they could do was respond in kind and fire 15 missiles right back. At some point, one player popped 15 missiles, I believe with a V-Jet. 15 missiles in a 5-minute game. And combine that with the other player they had that was using Mini or sloshing machine, which the sloshers are not sloshing machine, but like a vanilla slosher, which doesn't churn out a ton of missiles, but still, they discovered the meta really quickly. Let's run double armor and run like 15 armors a game, and let's just bombard them with like 20 to 25 missiles per game. That's what it boiled down to. And it makes me think, do you guys hate K-Gal or K52 so much? Do you guys hate Booyah so much that you would much rather see nothing but armor and nothing but missiles? It's like that's what this game is boiled down to. Where regardless of what the limitation is, it's just special spam at this point. I mean, there's more things. Don't take that to Twitter. This person doesn't know how Splatoon works. Yes, aiming has a lot to do with it. Movement is a huge part of this game. Movement is something that isn't really talked about enough because that's clearly what makes this game different from every other shooter, to third person or otherwise. But we've boiled this meta down to he who fires the most specials and capitalizes off of that typically is the winner. And well, obviously skill level has something to do with it. You guys know what I'm talking about, but my goodness. And that's kind of what I like about Shopping Spree. Now that I take some time to think about it, because Shopping Spree, you could tell listening to Barry kind of explain why he put each weapon into each category. Special spam was definitely a mindset in that. So if you want to bombard somebody with missiles, it's going to cost you. If you want to spam armor, it's really going to cost you. I think the only armor spamming weapon that you could use, maybe Permabrush, was $6, which is a lot. So like it's those kind of limitations that go into how can we remove special spam. Let's remove the good weapons from the game and all the special spamming things from the game. And that's kind of what I'm getting out of these gimmick tournaments is it's just fine. Okay, well, what can I spam next? Can I spam Stingray somehow? Can we get a lot of bubbles somehow out of this certain weapon? Like, how can we just keep just spamming things? I mean, Keo landed 9 splashdowns at one point with V-Shot. When was the last time anyone landed 9 splashdowns ever? Like, I didn't even know it was possible to get 9 splashdowns actually landing at some point. That is insane. But that's kind of what I got out of these gimmick tournaments. And that's why... Yeah, would I like to see Starburst FTWin play in an actual legit setting so we can determine not once and for all who's better than the other, but we can actually see them play without having an excuse built in for when it doesn't work out for one team or the other. Yes, but I don't know. It's just what I saw yesterday. All those missiles coming across. It's like that's not inherently better than what the current meta already is. Do we need more gimmick tournaments? I'm not opposed to them. I think a lot of people are excited about them. They seem to be like a fresh thing. But I'm ready for the next major. I'm ready to see what the actual game can do. I feel like we haven't quite figured... I feel like this meta isn't exactly like set in stone just yet. Honestly, I don't think it's exactly KGAL, and there's probably people who are more experienced in this game who could say something better about that. But I'm not willing to give up on the meta just yet to where we have to do nothing but gimmick tournaments from here on out to draw in views. I mean, the Nintendo tournament is not a gimmick, but it's very untraditional. 1,000 people watching that. 400 people were watching the launch day tournament live yesterday in grand finals. That included the amount of people that were watching it Saturday as well. I don't know the exact numbers, but I want to say 300 to 400 people were watching the Shopping Spree tournament live. There's a lot of attention put onto these tournaments, and I think it's just I don't think it's has to do specifically with the gimmick. I think it's just because we're drawing in these high-level teams that everyone wants to see play against each other. So maybe something will show up eventually to where we can actually get these two teams playing against each other without any limitations at all. But until that happens, I guess you could say FTWin beat Starburst 6-0 in missile spam heaven there. And that's all that I really have time to say today. I got a lot of other stuff to do. I got to start writing the next episode, which might be tomorrow. If you'd like to be a part of the podcast in any way, if you want to DM me like GGs, don't do that. If you want to DM me any information about your team for the seeding stuff, don't do that. It's over. Nothing can change. Stop. If you want to reach out to anything Popcast related, feel free to reach out to me. Socials below. Twitter, Mr._Popgun, Discord Popgun, #5882, YouTube Popgun25, Twitch Popgun25, 25 Popgun on YouTube. The VOD will be up in an hour or so. Today, who are we rating? Tomorrow or Wednesday, LUTI predictions of mine will be out. Let's raid Watson. That's an easy one. Friday, Low Ink preview. Make sure you sign up for Low Ink sooner rather than later. Our seating, our verifying staff has a lot of work they need to do this week, so make sure you get it in now so that they can actually get in there and verify them, and not have to stay up all night Friday doing all that stuff. Bye.